playing a much more conventional for a deck that's existed for 1 week. Conventional build of the Prime Seeker Band deck.
Looks very much more akin to the version that Matt Sperling and Paul
Celestian, Azorius Charm,
yep.
couple Syncopates, 3 Sphinx's Revelations. He's playing against the Aristocrats Act 2. I believe Ryan was mouthing to the camera that this is a terrible matchup.
Yikes! I know. I know. Speaking with Mr. Sperling on the old American Online AIM, if you will. I'm old school. He said, yeah, I think the Aristocrats Act 2 is the worst matchup, but no one was playing at the PTQ I won. So we'll see if that does hold true and if Ryan is correct here, or we'll see if Ryan is, in fact, the best in the world. As Sam does have a Cartel Aristocrat on turn 2, as both players are just establishing their mana base. Is something that is very common and standard here. So we'll see if Ryan does have a good turn 3 play. Maybe a Loxodon Smiter to get the game started. So we're going to see a Glacial Fortress, and we got 3 mana being tapped. So there is your 4/4 Elephant with a hammer.
I think it's actually really important for this matchup for Ryan to be ramping into his Haymakers. It's basically impossible, in my opinion, to beat the Aristocrats on the board trying to nickel and dime them back and forth because their deck's so much more efficient at that. You need to be just ramping up to big stuff as fast as possible. So as good as Smiter is, you know, it's going to be the biggest guy in play. Sam's deck doesn't generate things that are of that size. I don't think that's a path for victory for Ryan. I think he's got to be a little more far-seeking and playing removal spells and trying to get to just Thragtusk, Angel Serenity, etc.
And Sam is, certainly more than happy to try to swarm around that or fly over it with the Lingering Souls and Falconwrath Aristocrat.
Yep.
That's just what he can do. As Sam is going to play Lingering Souls and he is going to pass the turn back. So Ryan's going to draw a card. You see Hollow Fountain is draw for the turn. I think there's a Supreme Verdict hiding out over there in his hand. Big question is, is it time to pull the trigger on that? As this is a kind of a crappy Supreme Verdict.
No, I think he's got to. I think he's got to sit for a little bit longer.
The big issue here is, if he sits with that, the big issue with this deck, period, Band Control, is that it has a lot of trouble against Falconwrath Aristocrat. It's very, very difficult card for this to beat. We saw it previously. Around Grand Prix San Antonio time last year when Black Red Zombies was the deck to beat with its Aristocrats and its Thundermaws, pushing Band Control out of the format because Aristocrat was so difficult for that deck to beat. And we see it here again. Not much has changed. Yes, some of the cards around Falconwrath Aristocrat has changed, but it's still just as difficult for that deck to beat.
Yep. Sam Black with a basic planes he found out of a draft box. tries to resolve Falconwrath Aristocrat. All right, it's in.
That's going to resolve. No Dissipate or Syncopate here from Ryan. In comes the Aristocrats. And along with a little bit of Spirit Tokens as well. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 will be the damage for Mr. Sabin.
So when I said that I don't think that that Ryan can win playing this way, I also rolled into that meant racing.
Sure. Yeah, pump the brakes.
I mean, that attack was fine last turn. It was, his 4 points against Sam's 2, but
Aristocrat kind of changes things.
Yeah.
Does a nice job of that very quickly. As you do see Sam's hand right now, he has a Boros Reckoner, he has another Aristocrat, he has a Blasphemous Act. Here comes the Smiter, and we'll see if Sam, one thing that you want to do against this Band Control deck, if you are playing the more established list or think you're playing against the more established list, is you do not want to make your Aristocrat into a 5/2. You don't want to turn Selesnya Charm on.
Yes.
So let's say that Sabin does cast the Supreme Verdict this turn. We'll see if Sam sacks a Spirit Token or a Cartel Aristocrat, making it a 5/2. But we're just going to see a Thragtusk here for Sabin, pushing himself up to 17. So Sam's going to untap. He's going to draw. It is another Blasphemous Act. So you see Ryan counting up the damage and wondering, Sam, can you combo me yet? This is going to come across here for 4, 5, 6 in the air. Going to knock Sabin down to 11. If he's not casting Falconwrath Aristocrat, I think he might be comboing this turn. And we're going to see a Boros Reckoner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's short a mana. He's setting it up for the next turn. And what he's also doing by doing this is he's kind of forcing Ryan to cast a Supreme Verdict this turn, which will leave behind a Falconwrath Aristocrat for Sam, which he's very happy about.
This is sort of where the power level of the Aristocrats ultimately comes from, even though a lot of the cards, the combination of cards kind of looks like nonsense on paper.
Yep.
It's very hard to attack and block against this deck because it has Reckoner, Cartel Aristocrat, Lingering Souls. It's very good at attacking and blocking efficiently. Also, sweepers are not excellent against the deck for kind of the same reason. And so it's very durable about playing against most reactive elements. So even though on paper the deck looks a little mishmashy, the sum of its parts plays out very well.
So let's see what Sabin is going to do this turn.
I bring up this story a lot with Sam, where I was watching the coverage of the Pro Tour. I was watching Tom play his deck on camera against Kibler Game 1, and I saw, Cartel Aristocrat and Boros Reckoner, all that stuff in play. And I said, I wonder what the combo is. Because I just assumed the deck went infinite somehow or had some engine. It's like, nope, this is something. It's just doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just playing a fair, honest game of Magic. As Thragtusk and Smiter are coming across here for Sabin. Sam Black, again, at 12 life, we do know that the Bant control deck does not really have reach. But, Simic Charm is something that these decks have been known to play on occasion as a one-of. We know that there isn't one over here in Sabin's deck list, but we are going to see some blocks here from Sam. Celestial Charm is the more commonly played pump spell. But Sam also does have a Tragic Slip here at the ready, in case anything goes wrong.
Yeah, but assume that he's just willing to, let the Reckoner die, shoot Ryan for 5. If something weird happens, then he can sack to Cartel Aristocrat and just Tragic Slip whenever.
Here's an Azorius Charm on the Reckoner. That's going to be put on the stack. Sam, with the decision to make right now, do you want to sacrifice maybe the Reckoner to the Cartel Aristocrat? Maybe Tragic Slip? What do you want to do here?
Sam is just mulling over how much he wants to. I think what he's considering here is how much does he want to lean on Blasphemous Act as his plan here, or how much is he happy just beating down with Falkenrath Aristocrat?
Yep. So you see Cartel Aristocrat is going to sacrifice that Boros Reckoner, give himself protection from white or green, make it so his Cartel Aristocrat's not going to die. No damage is going to come through here. We'll see what Ryan wants to follow his turn up with, excuse me. Sam's still with Tragic Slip at the ready, too. 3 mana, Smiter. I think we're going to see a quick untap here from Sam. Yep. Tragic Slip that thing. Untap. Play my Falkenrath Aristocrat. Yep. And that is it. 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 exactly. Sam with 11.
A very aggressive entrance into the red zone.
That's right. So Sam is going to win game number 1. He's going to put Mr. Sabin to sleep. As we do see the Aristocrats, Act 2, up a game against Bant Control. Take a look at the sideboards here. Sam, going to be on the draw this game, but you see 3 Zealous Conscripts, 3 copies of Electrickery, 3 Sorin Lord of Innistrad, 2 Obsidian Ghost Council, a Sever the Bloodline, 2 Duress, and an Intangible Virtue. Any of these cards really jump out at you as good against the, the Bant mid-range Prime Speaker deck that we see here? Obsidian, maybe?
I think Zealous Conscripts and Obsidian are both pretty reasonable. I think the Sever the Bloodline's okay. All these cards are reasonably powerful, I think, just because the Bant deck is just an expensive creature deck, so all these reactive elements that are good against expensive creatures could be in play here. My concern would just be you can only make your deck so top-heavy. All these cards are expensive, and so you have to be concerned about signing out too much stuff. I do think that Blasphemous Act, I haven't really seen this matchup in play too much. I suspect Blasphemous Act is actually pretty good in this matchup because the Bant deck is so main phase oriented. It's tapping out all the time, so it's reasonable to just punk someone out with that combo. And if you're still going to try to set up Aristocrat Blasphemous Act Reckoner Blasphemous Act as your late game package, I think it's very challenging to bring in all these expensive cards as well. So I would be concerned if I was in Sam's position, even though these cards seem good on paper, about just in general over sideboarding, because I think his best path to victory is just sort of clocking Ryan early, using Blood Artist as a hedge against Wrath, and having Reckoner Blasphemous Act as sort of a backup plan. On the other side, we have additional copies of Supreme Verdict, additional copies of Centaur Healer. Not that Healer is particularly good here, but the body is basically just as good as Smiter's. I guess Reckoner being the one thing that changes that up and gives them a little bit of life. I think a Singleton Sigarda makes a lot of sense here, but I don't think Dissipate's particularly good. I would not want to go there.
It's very high variance on how good that card's going to be. There are going to be situations where it's fine. There's going to be situations where you're looking at it and staring at like a Cartel Aristocrat or a Doom Traveler saying, do I actually want to counter this?
Yep.
And the answer is probably no. But there are cards worth countering. from Sam's deck, so that's what makes it kind of difficult.
Yeah, especially if you assume Sam's going to be going into some more expensive cards like Obsidian, Zealous Conscripts, maybe Sorin, Settle the Bloodline, what have you.
And, you know, maybe you just leave Dissipate in because it's worth countering Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
Especially when you're on the play. That could be worth it alone.
Although I don't know how reliable this deck has double blue on the third turn, because it has a Forest, a Cavern, 3 Sun Petal Groves, 2 Gavany Townships, 4 Temple Gardens. It's not. I don't think double blue is super reliable for this deck.
Sure. It also has those 2 Gavany Townships too.
Yeah, I think you can really only bring in Dissipate against decks where you're expecting the game to go to turn 7 or 8, and now I've drawn a bunch of cards, and now Dissipate covers me against anything bad that can happen. I don't think that you can bring in Dissipate as just sort of a general tempo play because of the constraints of the mana base.
Makes sense. We'll see if it does come in or not. You said there's 2 on the sideboard, right?
There are 2.
2 Dissipates, okay.
I like Sigarda here.
I like Sigarda quite a bit too. You know, just because it's a big body that has hexproof.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason most of the sacrifice part is whatever.
Yeah, Sam's deck, no shortage of targeted removal. So, and his deck is so good at kind of being fidgety inside of combat. It's very hard to attack and block against the Aristocrats because there's so many tricks the deck can present. Sigarda gives you a ton of insurance of, all right, it doesn't matter too much what's in his hand. I can't screw this up too badly. It's only, I'm basically playing to what's on the board. I don't have to worry too much about whatever tragic slip into some other morbid nonsense Sam has up his sleeve.
Yeah, and you want to, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum over the course of the weekend, but you want to talk about a good card that's not seeing play. Sigarda.
Yes.
That's certainly one of them.
Yep.
All upside.
I mean, it's been pushed out a little bit, I think, just by the prevalence of most of the control decks are just playing Supreme Verdict. You're seeing a lot less. I feel like we're starting to move away from Jund and Naya Ramp, which are traditionally the decks that have struggled the most against Sigarda, into more of a Revelations into Supreme Verdict type of decks. I think those are most of the control decks that are getting played now. And so Sigarda is a little out of place in those matchups. But certainly in any sort of mid-rangey, removal-oriented matchup, Sigarda is very powerful. Having 1 in the sideboard seems correct to me. I was going to a tournament with Van. I feel like I would want 1, probably not the second one.
Okay. We'll see what's going to happen here as we do again see Sam Black here with the Aristocrats Act 2. He is 3-0 thus far in round number 4 against Ryan Sabin playing Bat Control. Again, if you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan here in the booth. Starship Games Open Series has made its way to Milwaukee. If you do want to tweet with us at SCG Live, hashtag SCGMKE for your tweets. I've also got my phone on me and my laptop. We've even had Ted Knutson chime in today.
Wow. Back from the dead.
Yeah. Didn't think I'd be seeing that name on the old Twitter sphere. He's a big fan of my, he makes himself sound like he's a fan of my Goblin token now, so can't tell if he's being sarcastic or not, but either way, I'm happy. I hope you are too, Ted. Good to hear from you. Everybody else out there in the Twitter sphere who does want to interact with Pat and I, talk about the spoilers with us, what kind of cards are good with the cards that are being spoiled, all that good stuff. Have some fun with us this weekend.
All right, looks like we're about to get started here.
Let's do this thing. How does Mr. Sabin look? Is he happy with his hand? He's happy. There's a Hollow Fountain. Sam going to draw a card. I think Sam's invitational card should be Doom Traveler. What do you think?
Doom Traveler is not a bad choice.
This is very Sam, as we see one on turn 1 here. Temple Garden there for Sabin and just does pass the turn back. So Sam going to get the plink in for 1. Let the grind begin.
Yep.
Dissipate the draw there for Ryan, so they are in. Not too surprised. You see a Hinterland Harbor here. See, maybe he has a Smiter in his hand or not, and he's just going to pass the turn back. So that little brief moment of pause, maybe tip off Sam a little bit. There's a Dissipate coming. In for 1 again with Mr. Traveler. Sabin moves down to 18. See if Sam has anything interesting to do on this turn. You see a Falkenrath Aristocrat in his hand. You see a Godless Shrine and a Sacred Founder as well. I think there's at least 1 copy, potentially 2 copies of Lingering Souls in his hand. Well, there's your Godless Shrine on tap. Sam's going to move up to 18 as well to tie this one up. And here's a Lingering Souls, which I feel like
certainly going to be dissipated.
That's going to eat a Dissipate.
You can't script up that sideboarding too much better if you're Ryan.
And so now there is, that's an interesting card. You see Godless, you see a Glacial Fortress into Witchbane Orb, so that means that Reckoner can't go upstairs.
Okay.
With its effect, that means Blood Artist can't either. And so now you see Sam immediately come in there with the Falconer Aristocrat after playing a Sacred Foundry untapped. So Sam says, I'm not going to be targeting you with anything. Witchbane Orb is good against me, but not in this situation. There's a Gavany Township there from Ryan. We'll see if he has a Thragtusk. It's a Sigarda. Okay.
I mean, Sam's got that kind of covered between Aristocrat. I mean, he can still attack because he has Doom Travel Aristocrat.
And how about a second Aristocrat? So here those come, and Sam, yeah, all right, Doom Traveler as well.
And this is one of the problems about playing against the Aristocrats. You see a card like Witchbane Orb, the angles of attack that the Aristocrats have is so robust that very narrow sideboard cards like Witchbane Orb are not necessarily going to be good in every game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Jund where you're pretty safe that it's going to be a haymaker.
So now you're going to see Sigarda jump in front. Sam says, I'll sacrifice Doom Traveler. It's a human. +1/+1 on that. Give me a Spirit token as well if you don't mind. Your Sigarda's going to bite the dust. Yeah.
I think if you had told Ryan your curve, this game is going to go, you're going to be on the play and you're going to go Dissipate, Lingering Souls, Witchbane Orb, Sigarda, I think he would assume the game would have gone a little bit better than this.
This is just the power of Falconer Aristocrat, a card that Sam was able to find a home for yet again for Pro Tour Montreal. I mean, a card that probably was just instrumental in Tom Martell's win of that Pro Tour. It's a very, very powerful card, and it's a very hard card to answer. There are tragic slips in the format. Here's the Selesnya Charm to take care of it, but this is a heck of a card to have to be able to try to beat. And this is certainly a good start to being able to try to deal with this thing. As you see, Sam does have an Orzhov Charm.
Rebuys.
I've done this. It feels good every time. Bounces back to my hand. You have to try to beat this later.
Oh, I thought we were going to get our Doom Traveler back and sack it.
Well, that Charm exiles it, so doing that's not going to really do anything. Selesnya Charm?
No, I thought, Selesnya Charm, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
So he's just going to, he uses the bounce effect on Orzhov Charm and says, okay, you have to beat this the following turn, which I don't think you can beat the first one. I don't think you can beat the second one, and it almost certainly can't beat the third one.
Yeah, I think no one uses every part of the buffalo on Orzhov Charm like Sam Black. I just assume this thing is, it's just a kill spell with 2 kind of whatever set on it. Nope, all 3 powers are good.
And you see Ryan having a good laugh here. I think he knows that he's in a...
Are we about to prime speaker for a card? Yes, we are.
Yes, sir. +1. A cavern named Crab. And he's going to extend the hand. So Sam Black with the Aristocrats Act 2. And what is probably one of his better matchups. Defeats Ryan Sabin playing Bant Control 2-0. The Aristocrats, Sam's little baby. And go ahead.
I was going to say just again that's just a very impressive display of the diversity of the deck, basically.
Yeah.
Many angles of attack, very hard to shut down just with one specific card.
Yeah.
There was a card